champion strikes back. Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix to achieve his dream. Off goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton. Lando Norris wins for the first time in Formula One.
He's out around the outside. He's run out of road.
It's lights out and away we go.
Hooray.
Hey, what's up, everybody? EFF-1T, the Formula One podcast with me, Neil Curtis.
And Bekah.
Looks like we're back. I don't know what happened. I think we just got kind of caught up with a lot of stuff going on at halfway through last Formula One season. Turned out to be a pretty good Formula One season. It looked like it was going to be kind of a walk away, and then Max Verstappen got back into it at the end of the year. Thanks a little bit to FIA maybe, with some DQs for the Mercedes team and the drivers.
McLaren.
Sorry, you're right. McLaren teams
McLaren
and
Las
the drivers. So that got Verstappen back into it, and what had started off as a Norris-Piastri battle, or even Piastri-Norris battle, because Piastri, I think, was killing it at the beginning. Norris called him back up, and then, like I said, Verstappen inserted himself into the fight. Turned out to be a pretty good season for them, with Norris eventually taking the championship. McLaren
By 2 points.
Yep. McLaren finishing off as the constructors. I think Ferrari still managed second place. I can't remember. And then Mercedes behind them, with Verstappen pulling all of Red Bull's points for the season, basically.
Most of them. Not all of them.
So, pretty interesting end to the year. Lewis Hamilton, who had his first year in Ferrari, had a miserable time by his own account, and I think most of the drivers and teams were, for the most part, pretty glad to see the quote-unquote ground effects era of Formula One head out as we embarked on the 26th season. Brought in a whole bunch of new changes to the cars. Changes to chassis, what they could do, how they could do things. A lot of what was a 50-50 split between kind of electric and regular internal combustion. A lot of harvesting to help save up the battery, and away with DRS and in with the boost.
Rip DRS.
And just kind of a whole different era of Formula One that, for the most part, I think just about every driver hates.
Yep.
The closest one being to not hating it, I think, is Lewis Hamilton, who is enjoying, he says, for the first time in a long time, actually driving the car. I think that's as much borne out from his dislike of the ground effects era and what it was doing to him in the Mercedes, particularly with we all recall the porpoising issues that a lot of the cars had during that time frame. But also after his terrible year with Ferrari last year, gained a lot more input, working a lot more with the team development, mechanics, the technical side of it, and kind of really getting the car into the spec that he enjoys a little bit better. And so that's, for him, I think, led to a much better season he feels so far. And as we'll talk about, has kind of borne itself out. I don't know, Becca, what do you think about saying goodbye to last year and kind of how that closed out and where we're at now?
Definitely, as an Oscar fan, was a very devastating finish in that respect. But I think the rookies all had pretty good first seasons. We had a couple of them finish on the podium. Kimi Antonelli had a couple of podium finishes. Ended up getting promoted to the Las Vegas podium after the McLaren disqualifications. Isaac Hadjar had a podium at one point. And even like those who didn't quite make it to the podium, a lot of them got really close. I believe Ollie finished fourth or fifth in Mexico last year. Very close to a podium. Gabriel Bortoleto, a couple of good points finishes in there, from what I remember. So I think it was really good year overall for the rookies, but I think also still with the new regulations, it's still like they're still new enough to like adapt a little bit more to those regulations as opposed to other drivers that were in this one era for so long and now it's something completely new.
So kind of speaking about completely new and this new era, so but in the drivers and how everybody's adapting to it. I've seen really interesting start to this season. I don't think exactly what most people were expecting.
No, we were expecting George Russell domination this year.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that came from in a lot of the preseason testing and the engine development for this new engine. Mercedes power unit looked like it was leaps and bounds ahead of most of the other teams. Due to I can't get into the technical details of it. I have kind of understand it, but not enough, I think, to explain it like an intelligent person. But Mercedes with a kind of technical loophole on compression ratios and operating temperatures and when that compression ratio is measured, we're able to develop an engine that puts out a little bit better than the rest of it, or puts out, at least in the beginning, significantly better than the rest of the teams out there.
We got a rocket ship.
Yeah, that most people were kind of looking at it as a rocket ship. And so with that in mind, through the preseason testing, going into the season thinking this is it for George Russell. This is going to be his year. That's not what we saw, huh?
Nope. He came in. He had a good start in Australia. I believe he grabbed pole there and ended up winning that race. Horrible start for some other drivers. But yeah, and so everyone's like, all right, here we go. Russell domination. And then we went into the next couple of races and we started seeing Kimi Antonelli get pole after pole and win after win. And suddenly we were at 5 back-to-back pole to win races for Kimi.
Yeah, right. Absolute domination for not the rookie, but second year driver.
Yeah, second youngest on the grid currently.
Yeah. Second youngest, also youngest driver to win Monaco. And he took last week.
Youngest driver to lead the championship.
Yep, and he's leading it by a significant margin so far. He's got, let's see, I'm not sure, let me put this up, but he's leading it with, there we go.
Yeah, 156 points so far.
Yeah, so he's clocking in at 156. Closest competitor is Lewis Hamilton with 115. So looking at 46 point spread right now.
Yeah.
Which not insurmountable, but definitely a pretty commanding lead after 7 races, especially again for kind of a second year, 19-year-old driver over a field of very experienced, very talented drivers right now. You throw in the likes, like Lewis Hamilton there, George Russell, he's definitely had his time that he's logged. Charles Leclerc. Blogging tons of time.
I think a lot of
Ferrari.
people were expecting Charles to come back and fight Russell this year, I think.
Yeah, even Norris and Piastri, when you think about it, they've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
So Antonelli clearly dominating, and I would say, not to detract from his ability, because he certainly does have a very focused, very determined way about how he drives, especially when he's out in front. But with that car that he's got in the Mercedes, able, especially in those early races, to overcome some really poor starts.
Yeah.
Had some trouble in a couple races with getting off the line, kind of not dumping the clutch, but kind of just not even stalling out, but just not quite getting the start he needed, getting burned pretty easily by the Ferraris.
I think he had quite a few where he got beat to the punch on the start by literally just like a couple of tenths, but it was still enough for him to drop a place or two for the start.
Sometimes more than that. Like he had one or two races where he went from pole to like third or fourth pretty quickly, but always managed to work his way back up and usually managed to finish well ahead of the pack in that Mercedes.
Oh, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah. But kind of in that same vein, though, with kind of an unexpected driver on the team taking over Hamilton.
Yeah.
As we kind of alluded to at the beginning, kind of comparing what he did last season with what he's been doing this season. Really a lot better and a lot stronger, I think, this season than a lot of us were expecting.
Yep.
Been able to get in there, like I said, with the technical aspects of the car, make some changes, make some updates that really suit him and his driving style. That has managed to put him kind of ahead of Charles Leclerc.
Oh, yeah. It was very interesting. Like a lot of especially I think like China and Japan, like you're seeing these fights. We had a fight between the Ferraris, I believe, in China.
Yep.
That was like really fun to watch, and like seeing him being back on the attack this year, back in like with the improvements Ferrari has made with their new spinning like the back wing, the rear wing that just flips around, and everyone was like, there's just one mechanic that attached it improperly. It's like suddenly this works great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a joke, I think, about the whole flip. But
yeah.
It's I think it was Australia saw a pretty good matchup between the two, but China definitely really showcased the Ferraris battling against each other, and for a little bit, anyways, really kind of hounding the Mercedes for a bit before Mercedes finally just kind of took off.
Big switch up from last year.
Pulled away from them. Yeah, absolutely. But with that, Charles Leclerc, I think that was kind of the thought. I won't call it a concern, but one of the intriguing aspects of signing Lewis Hamilton was how that was going to work out between Hamilton and Leclerc going forward. Who is going to be the more dominant driver? Who's going to be the lead driver for the team? And
especially since Leclerc's been basically almost his whole career, except for like his first year in F1, his whole career has been Ferrari. He's been giving it to Ferrari for years and years now. And Hamilton's always been like Mercedes top dog. And then he was like, in a matter of 8 weeks, went from I'm staying with Mercedes to Ferrari time.
And then last year with Lewis having his struggles, and even though he didn't log any wins, Leclerc didn't log any wins last year, he did lead the team with the better finishes, typically out ahead of Hamilton through qualifying, through race days. But now this year, especially after those first two races, things seem to be flipped around a little bit. Seen some stuff, read some things about, in Japan, Hamilton switched up the brakes that he uses for his car to a new company. Leclerc did not follow suit. He kind of stuck with what he had. And since then, that fight between the two of them has really gone away. Hamilton's kind of been out in the lead and now we've got here in Barcelona, it looks like Leclerc has taken on the same company for his brakes.
He just isn't saying that.
And then, although we saw it in qualifying where it looks like he's probably still adjusting to that a little bit because of how he's learned to brake with the previous set, how he likes to, his driving style, he likes to brake a lot deeper into turns. And so a little bit of an adjustment, but I felt like through qualifying even and even kind of in the race where, again, in qualifying, he was so adjusted to the brakes, had that mishap at turn, I think it was 10, and put it into the wall. So that dropped him to P10 for the race. He worked his way up pretty well from P10 and had himself, I think, in position to finish at one point in at least P4.
Yeah, definitely.
If not challenge for a podium. Well, P5 really, and probably maybe even P4. If not for a little bit better pit strategy, and then his car failure at the end of the race, because he pushed up through the top of the field pretty quickly.
Yeah, he gained about 3 spots within the first lap.
Yeah, and then was on Verstappen through a lot of the race as well. And like I said, I think if they had actually worked their pit stop strategy a little bit better on the first round of pitting, I think he probably could have come out ahead of a couple of folks on that one if he had come in just a little bit earlier. But in the end, it didn't matter because the car gave up on him. But it looks like, though, if he has these next 2 weeks before Austria to get a little bit more used to those brakes, he might be able to get himself back into contention as well.
Yeah, he's definitely not super far off George right now. There is a bit of a gap, but I feel like we've seen greater leaps made.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Verstappen last year. And then I think the other big point for this year, as far as the drivers go, are your champion from last year, and your top three, your three contenders from last year have really not been in this, and that's Lando, Verstappen, and Piastri.
Yeah,
really just have not been in this title fight whatsoever.
Yeah, I think they've had races where their cars have shown potential, but I think both McLaren and Red Bull are having issues with the new regulations. Max especially is not fond of how the cars now work. And they've all gotten unlucky with a couple of DNFs and DNSs apiece. Oscar didn't start the first couple of races. Lando had back-to-back DNFs. Max DNF'd last weekend in Monaco.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a big combination of some bad luck, and the regulations are just not clicking for the teams this year.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see. All right, that's kind of a quick recap of the drivers, but now talking a little bit, kind of leaning into now the constructors and what we've seen over this season. It's been up until today, I would say, a pretty straightforward result for the races as far as the constructors are concerned. Mercedes has clearly dominated through the start of this.
We're back to this, guys.
Yeah, you just pull up the Formula One page and look at the 2026 race results, and there's that Mercedes teal through the first 6 races with Kimi Antonelli being the one, and not George Russell. But like we said just a little bit ago, George Russell with that initial win in Australia, and then Kimi cleaning up in China, Japan, Miami, Canada, and Monaco. Although we'll say Australia, China, Japan really showed the Mercedes out in front, dominating everybody. Really just kind of ran away from the competition.
We had those couple of scraps, we had the scrap with Ferrari in China. But honestly, other than that, it was a pretty good walk away from the rest of the pack, I think, where then the problem became each other.
Yeah, really. And you just had those two out in front, and they were kind of off doing their own race, sometimes 20 seconds almost ahead. And then after that, it was Ferrari with their own race. And then behind them, another 5 or 6 seconds was any mixture of the rest of the teams,
Red Bull, McLaren, Alpine. Yeah.
So Mercedes, like we said, with that power unit, with that little workaround on the compression, I think, with that big turbo, they've really, for the most part, really dominated this. But then Miami started to show, even though they won it, started to show a little bit more competition from the rest of the field. Canada as well.
Yeah, Canada was interesting. That was a big scrap between Kimi and George, because George ended up we thought George was maybe coming back a bit. He ended up with pole, started off pretty well, but then Kimi was right on his tail for a lot of it, and they kept going back and forth. they were like, hey, like the team was like, hey guys, you need to keep it chill. And they were like, anyways.
Mhm.
And I believe the racing stayed clean between them, but shortly after Kimi overtook for the lead, George ended up with car issues and ended up DNFing.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
But even with that going on, like behind them, the rest of the field wasn't that far behind.
No, definitely not.
So it was not kind of the domination we saw in the first 3 races. And then Monaco, they did. Kimi, I don't know what it was, but Kimi just seemed to like really have an easy go of it.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely took off. Hamilton with his best finish for Ferrari in an actual GP, not in a sprint fake race. But in an actual Grand Prix, Hamilton with a really impressive drive for Ferrari there.
Yeah, definitely.
Taking second place at Monaco, but Kimi, like we mentioned earlier, youngest driver to win in Monte Carlo. And but even though he fairly well dominated and stayed pretty well ahead of the Ferrari, still saw a little bit of fight. Saw Russell kind of fall down the pack. He did have a number of penalties.
That was a
pit lane speeding infraction.
That was a very interesting happening because he ended up being one of half the grid with one of those penalties, and then we had the safety car because of Stroll, I believe it was when it happened, and they were like, okay, we're gonna pit Kimi because Kimi's out in front right now, and then George was like, I guess I'm pitting since it's the safety car, and they're like, no, you should stay out, and it was like, well, too late, I'm in the pit, and then in all that confusion, they forgot about his time penalty. And it wasn't served correctly. So he ended up almost bottom of the pack by the end of Monaco.
Yeah.
Bottom of what was left after the DNFs in Monaco.
After that carnage. But again, I think Mercedes still very strong, but not quite the same as it had been in the first 3 races. And with that,
packages.
You kind of have Ferrari has just really been hanging around. Like we said a little bit ago, first 3 races, best of the rest, and not in the kind of more traditional sense where you have your top 3 teams and then you have best of the rest. But Ferrari was clearly head and shoulders above everybody else on the grid, except for Mercedes. And that's managed to keep them hanging around. Right now, I actually do have them still sitting there in second place, 190, so about 72 points behind Mercedes. That's pretty significant gap to overcome. Charles Leclerc's 2 DNFs certainly doesn't help that. If he had finished in the points on either of these last 2 races, especially with kind of where he was running at the time, this would be a lot different complexion.
Definitely.
I think. A lot different constructors fight. But
he was doing well in Monaco, and then that mess of the road just ended up being what did it for him, which was unfortunate.
But they've kind of benefited from their own interesting designs with a slightly smaller turbo that can spin up a little bit faster, get them going. I think help to contribute to their launches off the line. But then we saw in Barcelona today, I think.
Oh boy.
Ferrari brought in, announced that they brought in a lot of upgrades to the car, over 8 upgrades, particularly to the aero. And I think we saw that really pay some dividends today in Barcelona that we'll get to a little bit later on. But I think the other 2 that are kind of head scratchers are McLaren and Red Bull right now.
Yeah.
So McLaren, after absolutely destroying it last season and dominating and kind of winning the constructors with, I think, 4 races to go.
Yeah, Singapore.
Really seem to be still trying to find their way.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, it's definitely not the power unit because they're using a Mercedes unit.
Yeah.
So, and I think they're having a similar problem to, what Haas has had, where they're trying to bring in these upgrades, but the car has just stopped responding the way it should to certain things. So it's become completely unpredictable, which was a large problem for both McLarens today in Barcelona, but especially Oscar. That car just keeps sliding back and forth. Well, like they mentioned it during the race, he like was so hesitant on the throttle because that car is just unpredictable for them right now. And it's a really big switch up to last year, and probably can't feel good for either of them considering the
Yeah.
position they were in.
The car definitely, I think, through the first couple races suffered from some performance issues, not even getting to start in 2 of the races. So that obviously hasn't helped their title defense. And pretty much, I mean, they're sitting in third right now. They're only 49 points behind Ferrari, but still, they've got a lot of work to do themselves to get back in it. And then I think Red Bull in a weird spot for them in the, like I mentioned, the traditional best of the rest lineup, sitting in fourth, a little ways ahead of Alpine, who's had a good season so far. But I think Red Bull not really used to this best of the rest.
Definitely. They've been
moniker.
they've been in this spot before, but more as a result of having one driver that can win a lot and then another driver that might struggle because it's a second Red Bull seat. But I think it's both drivers have been able to score points this year and have even like really good qualifying positions. But like we aren't even like this car is not giving Max the opportunity he's had before.
Yeah.
He's been able to take Red Bulls from 17th to 1st in the pouring rain before.
Yeah.
And like this year, like we've had mostly dry conditions, I think, except for like one race.
Yeah.
And it's still like I feel like aren't seeing the same fight with Max this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that kind of, I think, gives us a quick little catch-up from our perspective anyway of the season so far. But today had what probably could have been a pretty boring, I think, Barcelona, Catalonia Grand Prix.
Yep.
Again, you had Mercedes with a great qualifying from Russell, but then and Kimi sitting right behind them until Lewis Hamilton pipped him right at the end.
Split them up.
Took the second spot, split the two Mercedes. But then you kind of had what almost looked like, I would almost call like a traditional F1 race that people kind of deride, where you had Russell getting out to about a 3-second lead over Hamilton, racing well, keeping the tires alive, keeping the pace going, managing his position in the gap. Lewis kind of back, managing his tires as well. Ferrari went with an interesting strategy for Lewis, starting off on the softs, hoping that maybe they could capitalize on that initial start and what they thought was the upgrades that they had brought to help them out, and get Lewis ahead of Russell in the beginning. And then if he could, try to build a little bit of a gap to help with the stops, because we saw through the practices and even the qualifying, the tire degradation here in Barcelona was absolutely horrible.
Insane.
Yeah, like all the teams were basically on the quali or going out, and you had like one shot on each set of tires to try to get your qualifying done. And
otherwise, they'd be shot and they couldn't use them.
At least not for qualifying. So, but it didn't turn out that way, really. So we had Lewis got out, like we said, kind of managed that gap, but instead of Mercedes walking away and opening up to like 8 or even 10 seconds, Lewis was able to keep it down around 3 seconds.
I think this was a track where the domination didn't really show for Mercedes. I think the tire deg was something they weren't necessarily prepared for, probably. Or it just wasn't one of their best tracks with the setup they've got.
Yeah, which was interesting. I think that is more into Ferrari's upgrades that they brought, because this should have favored Mercedes. They had some really nice straights. They did have some of the slower speed corners, but Barcelona overall is a very what's the word I'm looking for? Very well-rounded track where you have both some really nice long high-speed straights, but some high-speed corners, but also a lot of low-speed stuff as well. And so far this season, Ferrari's done well in the low speed, but not in the high speed. And Mercedes has just been the opposite almost. Although we did see in Monaco where Mercedes did well in the low speed as well. But so coming into this track, I think most people would have thought this would favor Mercedes quite well. But I think Ferrari's upgrades really helped him out here. And then Lewis Hamilton with some great race management in the beginning that helped him. He tried for an undercut on his first stop.
Yep.
And it did all right, but not, I don't think quite what they were looking for. And then on the second stop, got the undercut done well and managed to get out in front of Russell. And then it looked like Mercedes might have been trying for a two-stopper, but I'm not. Well, I mean, they ended up pulling the two-stopper, but the virtual safety car came out for when Fernando Alonso went off.
I believe it was Stroll first, was it not?
No, I think Stroll
Stroll brought it in? Yeah, Stroll brought it in. Yeah, I think
Fernando Alonso.
Fernando was the first safety car.
And that afforded Hamilton an easy pit stop, got a third set of tires on, and from there really just walked away from the Mercedes, which I don't think anybody was expecting.
No, especially because like he had that moment where there was a concern of a yellow flag infringement for him, and so Ferrari was like, like just to be safe, in case this penalty ends up coming our way, build a 10-second gap if you can. And then he was, I think, at around a 5-second gap when it came through that there was going to be no more investigation. And then he kept building the gap, and he ended up like 11, 12 seconds ahead at the end, something like that.
Well, with the second round of virtual safety car, he was almost 20 seconds ahead.
Yeah.
So, absolute masterclass from Hamilton. I think if you follow Ferrari, like close at all for the last 2 or 3 seasons at least, you've come to expect not the best strategy for them.
Uncharacteristically good strategy.
And uncharacteristically, good today for them. Really worked to their benefit. Hamilton getting out there and getting his first win with Ferrari today. You could tell it meant a lot to him.
Totaling 106 in his career.
Yep. And we saw like the race opening. I went through showed a lot of the leaders this year as young drivers in karting in particular, and like asking them who they looked up to, who they admired, who their racing heroes were. And Hamilton's first one was Schumacher.
Yeah.
And I really think him watching Schumacher dominate at Ferrari and the way he's kind of like chased Schumacher through his career, racking up the wins, racking up the championships, and kind of that debate between him and Schumacher of who the greatest of all time is.
Yeah.
I think that was not necessarily that, like internal competition with Schumacher, but knowing that Schumacher did it with Ferrari, knowing that Ferrari was that kind of team. I think Hamilton, he said today it was a dream come true. I think he's always wanted to come to Ferrari, wanted to win with Ferrari, and today to finally get that and to pull that off, I think for him really meant a lot. It was a fantastic day for him.
Yeah, definitely. Thus ends the streak of Carlos Sainz being the last Ferrari driver to win a Grand Prix.
Absolutely. A lot of reliability issues, though. We mentioned the virtual safety cars. We had some other folks who just pitted and had to go out. So you had Bottas, and Behrman all
Albon
pitted.
as well.
Well, Albon went in and then came back out.
He got revived.
So, but those guys pitted, did not finish today.
No.
And then you had Alonso,
which was sad for him because this is couldn't possibly be the last Barcelona Grand Prix of his career.
Yeah.
Because it's not coming back after this year for the foreseeable future because we now have Madrid.
Yeah.
Coming back into rotation. So it's sad for him because I think the commentators discussed it like there used to be like low attendance in Barcelona because Spain wasn't really like an F1 focused country until Fernando Alonso joined and he started bringing people into Barcelona. and he did great. He won championships, and now it's upsetting that with the car that Aston Martin has this year, it ended this way for him in this race.
Or is ending this way,
Yeah.
Then you also had, surprisingly, Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah.
Who he and Russell, again, battling it out, going back and forth with each other. Kimi finally able to put a move on him to get past Russell and get into second place. He was looking at probably a 5-second time penalty for exceeding track limits.
McLaren had reported him.
Yeah, busted that more than 3 times. So it looked like he's going to get that. And with Lando Norris about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds behind him, he really needed to open up at least that 5 seconds to ensure his podium would remain in place.
Yeah.
So he got past Russell. Kind of surprised a little bit there that team orders didn't let him go by just so he could get ahead by about 4.5 seconds.
Yeah, that was interesting to see.
But just as he got almost literally just as he got by less than a lap later, he experienced what kind of looked like commentators talked about too. What looked like almost the same thing that happened to Russell in Montreal. And so he was off to the side. And almost right at the same time, just a few seconds behind him, looked like Charles Leclerc started to lose his car as well.
Yeah.
Heard something about power steering maybe going out.
Believe he went back off into the gravel with that one.
Yeah, so he shot through a turn, had trouble had to nurse it back home, but managed to bring it back into the pit.
Just sad day for him, back to back. Again,
this time not his fault.
No, definitely not.
Just the car giving up on him, which again was a shame because he had pushed from P10. I think at that point he was running P6 behind Verstappen because you had Hamilton, Russell, Kimi, Norris, Verstappen.
Yeah,
and then you had
Leclerc. He was making a good push. He even had the potential to overtake Verstappen, but then
at one point, and then he just kind of fell back in. I think started going for tire management. And, but with Kimi's retirement, that will have met P5, significantly more points. So definitely not a great day for Charles to come out with no points. And then this last one, I think, is for you. Seemed like none of your drivers had the day you were hoping for.
It's Hamilton finally gets his win with Ferrari, and thus we sacrifice all of Bekah's drivers. It was I was tempted to just go back to sleep. I was tempted to go back to bed for a bit. It was really unfortunate. Ollie Behrman been one of my drivers since he joined F1, since he subbed in Ferrari a couple years back now. Not been having a good run of it this season. He started out really well, scored points the first 2 races, good points. And then somewhere along the way, Haas just started having those issues where the car did not respond the way it should have anymore. So it's been a rough go of it for him. Been a couple of DNFs now. He had one right before that big long break that left him with a sprained ankle, I believe, possibly fractured.
He really hasn't been the same since then.
He really hasn't, which is honestly it's sad and it's upsetting because especially if that injury maybe was worse than expected or if there's just a confidence issue now. But ended up DNFing again. Couple laps before Kimi and Charles, which was upsetting. Alex Albon, again, not one of my main drivers, but I like watching him race. I think he's a good driver. Also been having a couple bad runs of it, especially this race. Ended up out in Q1 while Carlos Sainz managed to progress forward. At Williams is just not doing it this year either.
No, yeah.
Also DNF went back out to gather some data, but still not the weekend he would have wanted. Oscar Piastri, as I said earlier, also having issues with the predictability of the car. Definitely not the season he wants after how things went for him last year, losing that big championship lead. Who else?
I don't know. They're drivers.
I do. Yeah. Also, Kimmy. I've really loved rooting for Kimmy, especially this year. It was really nice to see him doing so well this year, and then like battling it out with George Russell has been really entertaining. And then just out of nowhere after this like back-to-back win streak where was about halfway through Verstappen's record of 10 back-to-back wins, suddenly having this DNF. So yeah, I think pretty much everyone that I could possibly root for had a rough go of it today. Obviously, it's nice seeing a McLaren on the podium, especially given how things have been for us this season. But yeah, I think it's a rough one for me.
All right. Well, with that, we'll kind of wrap it up there. Looking forward now to Austria in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Maybe the 26th through the 28th.
The Red Bull Ring, see if they can bring something.
Yeah, I doubt it. But that's all right. We'll see if Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari can continue their recent charge.
Or if Kimi gets redemption, because last year he ended up taking himself and Verstappen out within the first lap or two, I think it was.
So make sure you like and subscribe One Fan's Opinion. You get notifications of when we go live with these, get these podcasts uploaded, and talk a little Formula One action.
It's fun.
All right.
We're so back.
We are so back. And we will see you guys in the next one.
The world champion strikes back. Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix to achieve his dream.